And a very happy Wednesday to you, everybody. It's Sports Daily on KFH. I'm Tommy Castor, along with Paul Savage, in for Jacob Albracht this week. Jad Chambers back from his time off, producing the program for you today. The KFH hotline is open for you at 869-1240. We've got a lot to get to on the program today. Going to do some giveaways here in just a little while. We've got that going on here later on this hour. Some NFL news, free agency, all of the different moves that are happening around the NFL. We will get into all of that as the show progresses today, and a whole lot more. Paul, how you doing today? Happy Wednesday, my friend.
Well, good. How's your day for a day after your birthday? I mean, here you are, celebrated all day long.
It was good.
Tommy Castor this, Tommy Castor that, all day long, and now it's over.
Yeah, my wife texted me during the day yesterday while I was at work, and she asked me, she was like, hey, have you gotten a lot of birthday wishes from people? And I said, well, yeah, but the most important one, my dentist, I got an email from him wishing me a happy birthday, and reminding me to floss.
Yeah.
So, nothing's more important than that. So I appreciate getting that message yesterday.
Well, there you go. Why not? Well, anyway, happy birthday again, but now it's over. Let's move on.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, we went to dinner last night, took a little family dinner for my birthday. We went to that Social Tap restaurant. I don't know if you've heard of that. There's a location on the Wichita State campus, but then there's one on the east side on Greenwich at 21st and Greenwich. Went there for dinner. Delicious. Great burgers. It was awesome. And I've heard that at least at the Wichita State location, that's a really cool place to go and hang out when the weather's nice, on the weekends, on the patio and all of that. So appreciate that. That was a really good time.
Yeah, I think we need them as a sponsor on this show.
I'm good with that.
I think we need them. Come on now, let's go. For me.
I'll see what I can do. As soon as I take off my on-air host hat, I'll put on my sales hat.
Right.
See if we can get something like that accomplished.
I'm right in the middle of both those. I could go to either one, either
like
one
that.
of those. And I could. I love eating out, so why not? Let's get them as a sponsor.
You like a good burger? Are you a burger fan?
Oh, come on. Look at me.
Well,
look at me. Come on.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
They had 10 different kinds of burgers on the menu. Pretty solid
That's
stuff.
Good.
I was a big fan of that. So anyway, I appreciate all the well wishes yesterday. And now we get into it. It's college basketball tournament time, Paul. We've been talking about it all week long. Today is the day for Wichita State, K-State, and KU, all in their conference tournaments. The very first one up, and the first one we're going to talk about today, Wichita State. That game tips off at noon, pre-game at 11 o'clock. You'll be able to hear all the action over on KUIN. So ideally, Paul, our listeners will wrap up the show with us all the way to 11 o'clock and then switch over to Mike Kennedy on KUIN for the pregame show for Wichita State in the American tournament. It's obviously an important game, Paul. It's win or go home for Wichita State, and that's the way this entire conference tournament will play out for them. This is a team that, they're playing Rice in this opening round game. They beat Rice pretty handily the last time these two teams met inside Koch Arena. So you would think that the Shockers have the advantage to be able to get an opening round win and move on to tomorrow. I think the most disappointing thing clearly for Wichita State would be in the very first game of the conference tournament for them to get bounced by a team that they're better than, and the season is over. That would be the worst case scenario. So you got to kick off that tournament with the win, move on to tomorrow.
Thank you for the guarantee win. I know that's not what you're saying. I'm being a little sarcastic with you, but this is a Wichita State team that I wish I could tell you that this is going to be a win. I'm not sure I can. I'm not sure you can. I'm not sure in your heart of hearts you believe that this is going to be a win.
I want to believe.
I know you do. So
I desperately want to believe
desperately. Both of us want to believe, but I'm not sure that we can, not at this point. Come out and play, Shockers. Come out and play hard. Come out and show that you've got some fire, that you want to play on. This is your tournament. This is your tournament. You play till you lose. Extend your season. Every day counts. Every game counts.
Yeah, the Shockers beat Rice a couple of weeks ago. 87-66 was the final score of that game. That was the game, Paul, that really the lid on the hoop went away for Wichita State. They shot the ball fantastic in that game.
Right.
And I think that was also the turning point that at least at that time, we kind of thought, okay, things might be trending up a little bit for Wichita State. Then they go on the road. They beat UAB. That was, around that same time they had that road win. And then they fall to Tulane in the regular season finale. And that kind of stopped that momentum. It stopped that trending upward momentum that I feel like they had. And now you're in a situation, because keep in mind, we discussed it last week before the Tulane game, that Wichita State had a really good chance, a really good opportunity to stay out of this opening round game, to stay out of the play-in games today. And they weren't able to get that done because they lost to Tulane. They had to they could control their own destiny to an extent. Had they gotten that win on Friday and then a little bit of help, and it really wasn't out of the question that they would have gotten that help, that they could have avoided a game today altogether. Now they're in a situation where they've got to play Rice again in the play-in round, the very first game of the tournament. In your mind, knowing that they beat Rice by 21 the last time they played this team a couple of weeks ago, what do you think it's going to take for Wichita State today? I mean, I don't think it's realistic to say that on a neutral court in this conference tournament that they'll be able to shoot the ball like they did against Rice the last time they played. But I do think they need to have at least a decent shooting day if they want to have that opportunity to win.
Well, there's no question that's the key. You already touched on what I would say, and that is you got to shoot the ball, put the ball in the hole. That's what you got to do. Now, I watched a lot of that Tulane game. Now, I'll be truthful. I'm not familiar with a lot of things about Tulane. I mean, I know it's in New Orleans.
Yep.
I know that their colors are green and blue. Past that, I don't know a lot about them. But I can tell you this right now: Wichita State lost to a Tulane team that is not a very good basketball team. I didn't think they were very good, at least when they were playing Wichita State. So, with that being said, what do I expect from Wichita State? I expect a win. Tommy, and why do I expect to win? Because they've already beat this team. And I expect a Wichita State coached by Coach Mills. I expect a team with some fire and some desire to extend the season. Why? Pride. We're not playing for this season, are we? Are we playing for this season?
I think that's a really good point.
We're playing for next season. Yeah. We've got to prove to ourselves that we can play hard, that we can put the ball in the hole and make a run in this darn basketball tournament. And I'm convinced that they can do it. Now, once they get to the finals, that might be another deal. But man, if they could get to the quarterfinals, what kind of jump start would that be for next season?
I think it would be, and I think
too.
I think to your point, and this is something that I think we can dive into and dissect a little bit more, the importance of this tournament for the fan base. I think in general, having at least I don't want to say a good taste in their mouth, but at least feeling a little bit more positive about everything as the offseason progresses, as they move into this offseason, and Paul Mills gets ready for his second year at Wichita State, working the transfer portal, working all of that, and not only bringing in new players, but retaining, depending on the fit for the team moving forward, retaining the players that he would like to retain. I think that's going to be, essential that they have a good showing in this tournament. Mm-hmm. The worst possible thing would be for Wichita State, as I mentioned, to go out with a whimper this season. Mm-hmm. Because then there's nothing positive to look forward to, right? I mean, if you leave that bad taste in the mouth of the fan base, you lose in this game today, and then all of a sudden the season is just done. I can't think of anything much worse than that.
I've been doing sports talk radio for a while. When the word whimper comes into the conversation, that's never a good thing, is it? Never a good thing. But you're exactly right. This is a team that it's going to be one of two things, Tommy. Either they're going to come out and play with a vengeance because they've got pride because they want to play, or they're going to come out. They're going to let Rice roll around on them. They're going to let them get to the hole. They're going to let them take open threes. Mm-hmm. They're going to, they're not going to defend. They're not going to, not going to move the ball, not get hands in pat. All the little things it takes to win a basketball game. And what we're going to see is possibly that not happening. One of the
major narratives, Paul, about this Wichita State team is when they've played teams in their conference that they are. I'm not even saying that we think they're better than. We know they're better than. Objectively, they're better than teams like Rice. They've at times struggled. They've played down to that competition. They didn't do that the last time they played Rice. They beat them pretty handily, but it has happened from time to time. Tulane is a good example of that. I would say that, per the metrics, Wichita State at the time when they played Tulane last week in the regular season finale, they were objectively better than, and they lost to Tulane by 10. You look at one of the metrics like the net rankings, for example. Wichita State is 80 spots higher than Rice is in the net rankings. Wichita State's like 157th in the net. Rice is all the way down in the 230s as of right now. By every metric imaginable, and even if you just look at the straight up records, the strength of schedule, everything that you try to find some kind of objective way to rate these teams, Wichita State is better than Rice is. And not just by a small margin, by a large margin. That's why I say in this scenario, they have to come out and they have to win, and they have to win convincingly, I think, because at that point, you're starting to get the train back on the tracks, and you can then make a little bit more noise, I think, in the conference tournament.
Doesn't mean a thing. What you just said doesn't mean a thing, does it? Because it's going to, what I'll tell you what, look, I'm pointing to my heart. See how I'm doing this, Tommy?
Yeah.
I
got you.
But I'm pointing to my heart right now, aren't I? I'm pointing to my heart because throw out all the metrics, throw out all the stats, throw out what happened at Wichita State, a couple, 2-3 weeks ago. Throw that out too. Throw everything out. This is a new basketball season for Wichita State. Let's see how they play.
Yeah.
Let's see what it means to them. Let's see if they have heart. Now, me, I can tell you that as a player, way back in the day, I played with leather helmets. I don't know if you knew that or not, but anyway.
The forward pass was not part of it. It was illegal at that point,
illegal.
Right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But anyway, but I can tell you this, as a player, even in bad situations in which one year at Baylor, we were way down.
Sure.
But I'll guarantee you the fight never left. I mean, we didn't have a lot of personnel that other teams had, but we fought. Never did we ever have a coach come in and say, you didn't give your best efforts. You didn't do what you wanted to do. We're going to get better. And we did get better. But here's the thing. That's the thing about Wichita State. It's about heart. It's not about talent. They've got enough talent to beat Rice. Do they have enough talent to make a run in this tournament? Maybe.
What makes you, let's talk about scenarios, assuming they win today and they move forward in the tournament. What would be a good overall showing for Wichita State that would make you feel more positive about this program entering the offseason? Do they have to win 2 games? Do they need to win 3? Do they need to have an upset in the tournament? What, in your mind, when it's all said and done and the dust settles, because we know that this team, they're not playing in another tournament. Like, they're not going to get a bid anywhere unless something magical happens, miraculous happens, and they win the American tournament. I think that's very unlikely. What would make you feel good about this team in the offseason?
3 wins. Now, is that realistic? No, but I'll tell you what I will do, Tommy. I'll settle for 2.
Okay.
I'll settle for 2. Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
Because I think 2 would be enough for that catalyst, for that reigniting of the interest in this program. Because you know what you and I'll say tomorrow when we're on this radio show tomorrow, if Wichita State wins? I can preview what we're going to say. That was a gutty effort. They made shots. They rebounded. They got second chances. They defended pretty well, Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going to say. I'm previewing what
they'll probably turn the ball over more than they should. That's kind of what this team is known for.
Right.
Here's the thing, Paul. You said 2, minimum of 2 games.
Minimum of 2, but I like 3.
If they win today, you know who they'll play tomorrow? Memphis. They've got Memphis.
Okay.
This is a Memphis team that beat them by 25 points in Koch Arena in January.
Good.
It's a team that the Shockers went on the road to Memphis just a few weeks later, had a large lead, had a second half collapse, lost by 2 in Memphis.
Yeah.
It's a Memphis team that's got a ton of talent, but they've kind of underperformed this year.
Good. You know why I say good? That just makes the taste of vengeance all the better, doesn't it? I said good. What a story. You want to be a story. You want to have Wichita, wagging their tongues about Wichita State basketball again. Win 3 games. Beat Memphis tomorrow. Well, not it'd be tomorrow.
Yeah, it'd be tomorrow. It'd be tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm off on my. But go ahead and beat Memphis.
Yep.
You want to get a little conversation about, hey, Wichita State. Come on now. We can't make fun. The fight that they gave. That's what we want to see. And now's the time to do it. Starts with Rice. You got Memphis tomorrow. Go beat Memphis. I'll tell you what, Tommy. You beat Memphis. You beat Rice. You have a new start. And not only that, you have fans thinking to themselves, something's up, something's good, something good is going to come from this tough season.
I'm not a fan of moral victories. I know you're not either, coming from the coaching profession.
Doesn't work for me.
But that being said, I do think that there is something valuable in the fact that, if they're able to make a little bit of noise in this tournament starting today, that is a little bit of a moral victory because they very easily could have folded up and went home. You know what I mean? They very easily could have said, it's just not our year. It's not going to work. And I think that if this team can get up for this game today and then continue to move forward, like I said, the worst possible thing, not only is this the first game for Wichita State in the tournament, it is the very first game of the tournament.
Yeah, first game, winning one game is, well, that's a no-brainer. I
Right?
mean, we've got to have it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything worse than going down to Dallas-Fort Worth for the tournament, playing in the very first game and turning around and going back home.
That's the worst case scenario.
You know what I mean?
And I'll tell you what, people will lose interest, will not believe. But at least if you get one win, you beat Rice, and you then say you lose to Memphis. You know what you and I will say? As long as they play hard, they play good, they keep it close, we're making progress. A win would be better against Memphis. But you lose that game to Rice today, I don't know. You might lose the hearts and souls of Wichita fans.
The last time they played Rice in Koch Arena on March 2nd, Colby Rogers had 25. He basically is the main scoring threat for Wichita State. Harlan Beverly added 23.
Right.
And so that's something that I think they're going to need to rely on. Xavier Bell's been a little bit quiet offensively, so they're going to probably need to have more come from him throughout the course of this tournament play. So it's going to be important, and it starts today. It may be overstating it, Paul. It may honestly be overstating it, but I do think that this game has a lot of pressure. I really genuinely think it does. It's going to signal, I think, quite a bit to the fan base moving forward, whether or not they get a win today. Like I said, it all kicks off today. Pregame begins at 11 a.m., tip-off at noon with Mike Kennedy over on KEYN. K-State and KU both in action in the Big 12 tournament. We'll give you updates on both of those teams on the other side. It's Sports Daily on KFH. We want to thank our friends over at Prairie Fire Coffee. Every morning, they are fueling us with that caffeine, that great coffee here with Sports Daily and KFH. We do really appreciate that. From our friends over at Prairie Fire Coffee, I've got my coffee here. Paul, I think he's got his.
Thank you very much.
I also want to mention real quick, Paul, before we get into our next segment, our video stream is back up and running today. We did not have it yesterday. There were some construction plans, some remodeling planned in the studio for yesterday. And so we weren't able to actually have the video stream up and running yesterday. It's back up and running today. So our video stream is live. If you want to check that out, you can see Paul and I on our video stream on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitch. The Big 12 tournament is underway. We had the opening round games yesterday, Paul. It was definitely one of those days that, you look at teams in the Big 12 that may be down at the bottom of the standings in the regular season, but there is absolutely talent on those teams. UCF, they took it to Oklahoma State. I watched a little bit of that game yesterday, and Johnny Dawkins has a really good team. It's a team that beat Kansas earlier this season. They were in that play-in round, and they beat Oklahoma State to move on to the next round. And then the game that really matters most to Jayhawk fans, Cincinnati and West Virginia. West Virginia had a big-time lead for quite a while, and it took multiple technical fouls in the second half to get Cincinnati back into the game. Ultimately, Cincinnati won, and that's who Kansas will face tonight in the final game of the quarterfinal round.
I would have rather had West Virginia win. Now, that's just me having watched, so many minutes of both those teams. I'm not saying I'm familiar with either one of them. I mean, it got to the point where I refused to watch West Virginia on television when they were on. But with that being said, I think I'd rather still face West Virginia if I'm the University of Kansas than Cincinnati. Cincinnati, remember, up to about 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was talk that they were going to be a tournament.
Yeah, they were looking okay.
If you remember correctly,
they were looking
that was
okay.
going on 2 to 3 weeks ago. Tournament team. So with that being said, I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I hope it's going to be a heck of a game. I can't tell you that it's going to be a heck of a game. The obvious question is, does KU have the talent out on the floor to be able to compete with Cincinnati? I'm not sure they do. And I don't want to be Pollyannish about it. That this is going to be one. Well, I guess that's not the right term. I don't want to be Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
But I don't know that University of Kansas, based upon what's going on with injuries and that kind of thing, do they have it? Do they have it in the tank? And you brought up something yesterday that made me start thinking. Do they want to win? Do they want to take the time off? Rest this team up to start to play in the tournament.
They want to win. They want to win.
I know. That was dumb.
But
You're
it won't
right.
be. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world for this Jayhawks team if they had an early exit. Maybe not today, because you don't want to get bounced, in the very first round of the Big 12 tournament. It has happened before for Kansas, but remember, they're usually a higher seed, and so they're getting buys, and then all of a sudden they're playing, on a Thursday or a Friday, and then they end up losing in their first game in the Big 12 tournament and all of that. In this scenario, I think you want to at least get this win today. But you know what? Vegas agrees with you, Paul. The Jayhawks are underdogs. They're the 16th ranked team in the country. They're the 6th seed. They're playing Cincinnati, the 11. They're an underdog. They're a 2-point dog in this opening game against Cincinnati. The thing about Cincinnati is that they're tall, they're physical, they get after it. That's one thing about this Bearcats team. And I watched that game yesterday, and I know that it took some technical fouls for them to get back in the game, but they do have some talent on that roster.
Yeah, I'm going to put you under some real pressure.
Yeah,
because this is going to involve your family.
Okay.
You got to put your mortgage on this game.
Yeah.
And you're going to bet the mortgage on your house. You take Kansas and get 2, or do you take Cincinnati?
I actually
mortgage on the house.
Yeah, I know.
Mortgage on the house.
That's why I'm hesitating, because if you said $20, it would be a no-brainer.
Okay.
Get plus money on the Jayhawks. But my mortgage is a little bit different.
That's right.
Because I don't want to tell my wife that we're homeless all of a sudden.
That's right.
I think I still would take Kansas on the money line, because they're getting plus money. And how often are you going to see the Jayhawks in an opening round tournament, game get plus money? Right. And again, I'm sure I'm gonna be criticized as a homer for that take.
Right.
And I know they're depleted, but I mentioned it yesterday. I do think there is something a little bit freeing about being able to play when there are no expectations on your shoulders.
Well,
They don't have the expectations to have Hunter Dickinson go out there and score 18 plus and get, 14, 15 plus rebounds. You don't have the expectation of Kevin McCullough going out there and scoring 18 and facilitating things and being all over the place. You don't have those expectations. So you can kind of go and have a good time, and have fun.
I've lived my life by that motto: have very few expectations about me and you won't be disappointed. That's my motto of life. So with that being said, this is what I think is going to happen. This is either one of two scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
This team is going to come together it's not like this team is without talent. Correct? I think we can
100%.
We can agree on that. They've got talent. On the players that will be playing, they're at Kansas for a reason. Correct?
Correct.
So with that being said, this team is going to come together, band together, become one, and play lights out and win this game. Or two, they could end up being deers in the headlight without a Hunter Dickinson, with missing several other guys,
Kevin McCullough,
and somebody else. But anyway, this is a team that's either going to come together or they're not going to come together.
Okay,
and I don't know that maybe there's a medium. Maybe this is just a good close game, and KU gets beat by 7. I don't know. I hope not, because we obviously want KU to go on. But is that in the game plan of Bill Self? Would it be and Tommy? Let me ask you this: will it be a disaster if KU loses tomorrow?
It won't be. Now, will they fall to maybe the 5 seed in the NCAA tournament? Maybe that could very well happen depending on what happens, with other teams. But if you are trading off, if there's a trade-off between being a 5 seed versus getting Hunter Dickinson and Kevin McCullough extra rest, and just your team in general getting them extra rest, I think Bill Self would take that trade-off. Say it's okay if we're a 5 seed, that's all right. As long as we get time off to rest and get healthy for the NCAA tournament, then okay. I think he would probably make that trade-off. So I don't think that it is, something that would be the worst thing in the world if the Jayhawks do get upset in tonight's game. Here's a question for you as far as a prediction.
Sure.
We talked about it yesterday. When you don't have Dickinson and you don't have McCullough, you're losing 36 points on average in offensive production with this team. You got to replace that somehow. Who's going to do it? Who is going to be the leading scorer for the Jayhawks tonight?
Furphy and Timberlake.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm just guessing, but I mean, that would make sense to me. Both of them have the ability to shoot. If Furphy can get his threes, good looks at threes, which good and well that you're going to be contested on those shots. Cincinnati knows exactly what we're talking about. You take away Furphy's three. In other words, you press him on the line, on the 3-point line. You defend him there and make these shots hard, make it hard to get looks. That will go a long way to defeating the University of Kansas in the eyes of Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
That's being said in the locker room as we speak.
Yeah.
So with that being said, obviously Timberlake showed us 2 games ago. I've lost track of time, but
it's been a couple. It was the game. It was the K-State game in Allen Fieldhouse.
Yeah, where he looked as good as anybody on the floor. Let's face it.
He looked like the guy that everybody wanted him to be all season long.
Right.
The reason why he was brought in from the transfer portal, because he was able to make those threes, and whether or not they were open or contested, he looked good. He looked good in that game, and there have been other times where kind of a flash in the pan. It's been there for Nick Timberlake, and it hasn't been consistently. It's going to have to be consistently. And I'm not even talking about today or this week, but if the Jayhawks want to get anywhere close to the ceiling that they have in front of them, he's got to be a lot more consistent. Now, if you've got Dickinson and McCullough healthy, then conceivably Timberlake is not going to start, but he is going to come off the bench and is probably going to need to have some crucial minutes on the court. And one of the things that Jacob has always said in regards to Nick Timberlake, in his opinion on the guy is, look, it'd be great if he scored, but when he's in there, the most important thing is don't turn the ball over, don't make stupid mistakes, defend well, do all of those things. And then any kind of scoring that he does is kind of icing on the cake. I get that. I understand that. But in a crucial win or go home situation, you're going to need him to be more consistent offensively.
Not the icing now. Now it's the whole cake.
It is the whole cake.
It's the whole cake. and it's got to be sharp and it's got to be productive, and then you have a chance. Listen, I don't know how this game is going to go, but it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be a close game, and I don't know who wins it, but it could also be a 20-point rout.
Mhm.
It could be.
It could be.
It could be.
It could be something where, maybe there's something that is unlocked for the Jayhawks without having those two guys, and all of a sudden Bill Self is getting different players comfortable in that setting, and somebody goes off. Maybe it's Johnny Furphy, maybe it's Nick Timberlake, maybe it's all Marco Jackson, or somebody like that has a big game. I'm not going to expect that DeJuan Harris takes a game over offensively, although I would love to see it because he's going to be the most experienced one on the court.
Mhm.
We just haven't really seen that from him this season. And KJ Adams does have experience in playing at the 5 position, although he is undersized for that position. I'm not going to put my mortgage on it, Paul, but I think I might put 10 or $20 on KU on the money line.
Right.
They're getting plus money, so why not?
Fair enough. I don't want you homeless, so
I appreciate that.
we're pulling that bet off the line at this point. We haven't mentioned Bill Self very much in this, have we? I mean, we've been talking about players and what's going on, who's hurt, who has expectations, what players have to do.
Yeah.
What do you think about Bill Self? What's in the back of his mind? This is a guy who's already in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Here's a guy making what, $5-6 million a year. I think that's accurate, isn't it? Somewhere in that neighborhood.
He's making a lot of money. I don't know off the top of my head.
I think it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So here's a guy. What do you think's in the back of his head? What is he telling his team right now? If we were a fly on the wall in the locker room, what's going on in there?
I think they're two different things. I
All
think
right,
I think that what's in his head is different than what he's telling everybody in that locker room. Because I think that he's telling everyone in the locker room that we can just go out there and nobody is expecting much out of us. Vegas thinks that we're going to lose. We're an underdog. We're missing our top 2 scorers. We're missing a guy that, is in the conversation for National Player of the Year in Hunter Dickinson. So go out there and have no expectations. Go out there and have some fun. Let it all hang out. Just let's go wild. I think that's what he's telling them. I think in his head, he's probably thinking to himself, not that he doesn't particularly care, because I know he cares, but this particular game in this particular tournament in this particular year doesn't mean a whole lot to Bill Self. I think what happens next week means significantly more to him than what happens in the game tonight. So I think what he's telling the team and what's in his head are probably two different things.
Built-in excuse, then, is what you're saying. Right now, there's well, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that
well,
I don't know if it would be excuse. I just think it's the reality.
the reality.
It's the reality of the situation.
I got you.
For this particular tournament, Hunter Dickinson is not walking through those doors. Kevin McCullough is not walking through those doors. So you have to work with what you have, and you have to try to find ways to compensate for it. Will the Jayhawks be successful or not? I think that they probably will today. I think in this game tonight, they probably will be. Moving forward, I think all bets are off. The bottom line is that, it's the final game of this particular round. It's the late game tonight. Tip-off is around 8 o'clock tonight. The game right before that, the Kansas State Wildcats. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we'll dive into the Wildcats tonight against Texas. It's an incredibly essential game for the Wildcats, too, as they are trying to make their case and build their resume to get back on the bubble for the NCAA tournament. It's not guaranteed at this point, Paul. We'll talk about that on the other side. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage, Jad Chambers. It's Sports Daily coming right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Sports Daily on KFH. Just a reminder, tournament basketball today on KFH and over on 103.7 KEYN. The Shockers in action at the American Tournament. Pre-game coverage begins this morning at 11 a.m. with Mike Kennedy over on KEYN. And then later this afternoon, Wildcat basketball tonight here on KFH. Pre-game begins with Wyatt Thompson at 5 p.m. You can find both of those broadcasts also on the free Odyssey app if you would like to listen to those games anywhere you go on your mobile device. Let's talk Wildcat basketball, Paul. The Wildcats in a position where, of course, they had that huge upset in Bramlage to wrap up the regular season against Iowa State on Saturday. The first game for them in the Big 12 tournament, they take on a Texas Longhorn team that has looked pretty good. They've kind of been up and down, maybe underperformed a little bit overall this season, but the Longhorns had a big time win against Oklahoma by more than 20 points to wrap up their regular season. That's who the Wildcats face in this opening round of the Big 12 tournament. They've got to have it, and they've got to probably have a couple more games in this tournament if they want to get into the NCAA tournament next week.
Well, that's right. But if you're a Wildcat fan or you're on this basketball team or you're Coach Tang, you go, first step taken care of. We had to make the first step to get to this tournament, because if you lost to Iowa State, the only option was winning the tournament, which is going to be very, very, very difficult to do. First step, beat Iowa State at home, get that taken care of. Mission accomplished. Second step, beat Texas. Beat the next team, whoever that will be, and go from there. But man, oh man, the University of Texas. You know what I would like? Here's what I would like. If I'm Kansas State, Jad, you pay attention to this, because this is how you are vengeful in life. I like on occasions being vengeful. I want to be the team in men's basketball that sends the University of Texas home, and they're done with the Big 12. We don't want them anymore. We don't like him anymore. I want to be Kansas State, and I want to send Texas home. That's pretty vengeful, isn't it?
There you go.
It's almost like I'm taking this personally, and I am taking it personally.
I get it. I understand it, because I don't disagree with you. You also are a Baylor guy, so you're just naturally going to hate Texas.
Well, that's true.
So
and A&M. I hate A&M too.
Fair enough.
I respect them. Yeah, but I hate them.
So I don't know if you saw this picture. It was floating around social media last night, and this is kind of off topic, but I found it hilarious. So the women's basketball tournament in the Big 12 just wrapped up.
Don't even bring it up.
And Texas won.
Oh, I told you not to bring it up.
Texas won the women's side of the Big 12 tournament, which is, a little interesting, because I know Kansas State, they had their sights set on winning that. But regardless, Texas won. And I think what's kind of funny is there were pictures of the trophy presentation after the Longhorns won. And so you had the athletic director for Texas there and the coach and some players. And Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, also on stage. And there's a photo of, I think it's Chris Del Conte, the athletic director for Texas, holding the trophy. You see Brett Yormark off to the side looking completely dejected. Like he would rather be anywhere else on the planet than having to present a trophy to a team that's leaving the Big 12.
No, I didn't
I'll have to find that picture and show it to you.
Yeah.
It was, and I'm sure that they just caught him in a moment where it wasn't a great candid
right
photo, and that happens from time to time. But it just looked like Yormark is like, why did this team of all teams have to win the Big 12 tournament, because they're leaving the conference?
Right.
So I know that there definitely is that mentality, and it's not just with Kansas State. It's with any team that's going to be facing Texas or OU in the conference tournament. They want to be the team to send them home.
Right. And last night, as I was, catching up on some things in the world of sports, and I saw some guy on TV say, and the University of Texas is going to take that Big 12 championship trophy with them to the SEC.
I hate that.
And the way it was said,
the
way it was said really irked me. They're going to take that trophy with them to the SEC. Boy, that just irked the heck out of me.
It's really interesting. I just decided to try and look up that photo just to see if I could find it to show you guys.
Yeah.
And Brett Yormark, Texas is the third thing on
trending?
the Google. On the autocomplete.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's the third one. So
did you find the picture?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
You'd have to show me. He doesn't look very happy in a lot of these photos that are involving Texas.
See if I can
I would have been more respectful of him if he had just said, I'm not going up on the stage.
Right.
Take your trophy and go. Now, how much heck would he have caught? How much?
Oh, a ton.
A ton?
Yep.
I don't care.
So it's
Find me whatever you want. I'm not going up on stage with those deserters.
yeah. So obviously for our radio listeners, it doesn't really matter a whole lot because you can't see it. You can search for it yourself. But there's the photo. Your mark is on the right side, Paul,
Oh,
and he just looks so unhappy
do you read
to be
body
up on there.
language?
Oh yeah,
Do you read body language?
absolutely. I mean, he
If you
looks
do.
so upset to be on that stage. So I know that there is, absolutely a motivation for, a team to be the one to send Texas and Oklahoma, for that matter, off to the SEC. Kansas State has that perfect opportunity tonight. And that's not the only motivation. Let's be
It's a
real.
lot.
They need to get into the NCAA tournament.
Well,
They
that's
need
right.
to get that
Well-
bid. They need to have a win against a team. Texas is in the top 30, I believe, in the net rankings. So that's going to look good on your resume to the committee if you can get that win. If they win, then they'll go on to play Iowa State. Again, it's the team that they beat on Saturday inside Bramlage. You know how to beat them. You've beat them before. Of course, Iowa State will be looking for revenge, but it's a one game at a time type scenario for Jerome Tang. If you're Jerome Tang in this setting and you know you're getting ready for this sort of situation where, again, it really is win or go home, because if they don't win, especially tonight, they're not getting into the NCAA tournament. What's the approach to your team?
Well, that is a really good question. I guess it is that we're building off of our win against Iowa State. Let's go. We can do it. Is there anybody in this country we can't beat? Well, you would have to answer the question. No, you can beat anybody on any given night, but you got to be ready to go and play hard. And I guess that would be my response. What about you?
Well, okay, so they have got to get Tyler Perry going. They've got to. They need him. He is.
Well, this is a team deal.
Well, I know, but he's the leading scorer of this team. But he's really struggled in the last couple of games.
Right. Okay.
Which is really honestly surprising to me, because he's the player that has never played in the NCAA tournament. And he, has already won an NIT title when he was at North Texas. The motivation is absolutely there. I don't know if he's in his head too much or if he's putting too much pressure on his shoulders, but I really thought, especially in that finale against Iowa State, that he would take the game over, and he didn't. He had 6 points really up until garbage time, with only not really garbage time because it was a close game, but up until a few minutes left in the game. I think he only had 2 points, and then he made a 3 and really, didn't really do a whole lot offensively. It was Arthur Kaluma that took the game over. It was Cam Carter who pitched in, and then it was David Gasson who had a double-double in that finale. And that's great. That's all well and good. I like Kaluma, and I think Cam Carter has been probably the most consistent player on the team this entire year. But man, if they want to make a run in this tournament, they've got to have the Tyler Perry that can make those shots. They've got to have the Tyler Perry that can take a game over. In my mind, with what Texas can do and the talent on their roster, even though they've underperformed at times this year, you've got to match that firepower. And the best way to do that is with Tyler Perry.
Right. I'm with you on that.
Now, it's going to be definitely an impactful and essential game for the Wildcats. That's the next to last game in this round, the second round of the Big 12 tournament. We've got all the action for you with Wyatt Thompson, the call right here on KFH tonight, as the Wildcats take on the Longhorns. Tomorrow on the program, we'll be talking with Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider, to get his reaction, either good or bad, on the game tonight. We'll talk to Tim tomorrow and get his feedback on everything that happens in this game tonight. That's going to wrap up hour number 1 here on Sports Daily. On the other side, let's shift gears and get into the NFL, Paul. Another really big day on the free agent front in the NFL, and some news that really does impact the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll get into that and a whole lot more. Hour number 2 on the way. It's Sports Daily on KFH.
K-State men's basketball today. The Big 12 Conference Tournament in the T-Mobile Center in Kansas City, Missouri. Kansas State taking on Texas this evening. K-State has lost 3 straight in the Big 12 tournament. K-State is a 4.5-point underdog matching up against the Longhorns this evening. Live coverage of K-State men's basketball at 5 p.m. The game will tip off at 6 o'clock this evening. K-State basketball right here on 97.5 and 1240 KFH. Then after that game, it's a late game at the Big 12 tournament. 16th ranked Kansas taking on Cincinnati, tipping off at 8:30 p.m. KU is without its 2 first-team all-conference performers with injuries. Hunter Dickinson and Kevin McCullough Jr. are not playing in the Big 12 Conference Tournament. KU, a 2.5-point underdog, going up against Cincinnati in the late game tonight at the Big 12 Conference Tournament. That'll be nationally televised on ESPN2. The Jayhawks in Cincinnati tonight. I'm Ted, the Sports Head.
Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily underway here on KFH. I'm Tommy Castor, along with Paul Savage. In for Jacob Albracht this week. Jad Chambers back from his time off producing the program. By the way, the KFH hotline is open the rest of the way at 869-1240. Keep that hotline number handy. Later this hour, we've got a giveaway that we're going to do. Terry Clark, the country music singer, will be at the Crown Uptown in April. We're going to be giving away tickets to that a little bit later on this hour. So hang on for that because we'll be doing that on the KFH hotline. But if you do have a thought or an opinion or a take on anything that we've talked about regarding college basketball in hour number 1, you can always call the KFH hotline and chime in. We are going to switch gears now, Paul, to the NFL. It's been, of course, a wild couple of days in free agency in the NFL, trades and signings and all of that. One of the major ones yesterday, we talked about Derrick Henry yesterday on the program, the fact that he had not found a team. I mentioned a couple teams that I thought would be a good fit for Derrick Henry. I said the Cowboys would be one. I also said the Ravens would be a good fit. That's where Derrick Henry ends up. The Baltimore Ravens teaming up with Lamar Jackson, the wide receivers that they've got in Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, and then the tight end in Mark Andrews. That's a pretty potent offense. How big of an impact do you think Derrick Henry will make with that Ravens offense?
The question is, what kind of impact will Derrick Henry make on the Chiefs? And it's big. It's big. This is the worst place that I wanted to see Derrick Henry go, was to the Ravens. Because the Ravens have a top 5 offensive line in Europe. It's got to be in the top 4 or 5, don't you think? They're very good. A quarterback that can run the ball, a quarterback that, if I'm not mistaken, was their leading rusher last year.
He's the reigning MVP of the National Football
League.
The
reigning MVP of the NFL. And I'm telling you right now, their defense is pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're better than what people think they are.
Derrick Henry is a future Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
He rushes for 1,000 yards every year, got 1,100 yards, which everybody's going, oh, geez, only 1,100 yards. Well, that's pretty darn good in today's environment with NFL and game plans and what NFL offenses do. 1,100 yards. I'm telling you right now, he's a player. He's a great force in the locker room. He's a veteran. He is just what the Ravens need, and that is to the disadvantage of the Kansas City Chiefs, because he's going to be something big in the cogwheel of the Ravens. I wanted him to go somewhere where he could show his skills, because he's a future Hall of Famer. I want him to pad those numbers. I want him to have his yards. I want him to have, but not with the Ravens.
It's more than that.
Not with the Ravens.
It's more than that. And we talked about it yesterday. He's had this illustrious career so far as a running back, but he's never won a championship.
Yeah.
The Titans have gotten to the playoffs.
They can get there.
But they never got over that hump.
They can get there.
The Ravens absolutely can. The Ravens were the best offense in the NFL last year without Derrick Henry. Now you add a guy like Henry, and let's keep in mind, he is 30. He didn't have quite as many rushing yards. His stats weren't quite as good last season as they had been in the past. He has, I don't want to say he's lost a step. He's maybe lost a half step. Will that continue? Will there be more tread on the tires in Baltimore? Absolutely. But the one thing about the Ravens running the football, Paul, is that it really hasn't mattered over the years who the running back has been for the Baltimore Ravens. Typically, the running back, whoever it is, they could grab somebody off the street and they usually have success in the way that that offense is structured, whether it's Gus Edwards in the past or J.K. Dobbins. They had Melvin Gordon, basically the elderly Melvin Gordon on their roster at one point last year, and he got some playing time. That's what they've done. They've never really, at least in the last several years, and to my recollection, invested in a high caliber running back. They've just got it done with whoever they've been able to get it done with.
Right.
This is different because now they've got Derrick Henry, and I don't know if they should shift the way that they approach their offense and, be a little bit more reliant on Henry, or if it's just business as usual and they do what they do and Henry just happens to be the guy in the backfield.
Well, here's the one thing with Derrick Henry in the backfield, particularly with the quarterback running back combination that the Ravens will have, assuming, Derrick Henry stays healthy, is every team's going to have to prepare for a two-back formation. You prepare for two backs different than you prepare for one back, because in most teams you're going to play in the NFL, everybody's going to have a single back somewhere, stacked somewhere, or, side set, whatever.
Who's the second back? Are you considering Lamar Jackson the second back?
Well, sure I am.
Yeah.
My guy, he was the leading rusher on that football team.
Okay.
Is he not like a quality back?
Sure.
I mean, I don't know how many yards he rushed for off the top of my head, but it was a ton, and he was a part of the offense. And so you've got it. Well, and I'm not saying you're going to line up with two backers in the box or three backers in the box, which you might do if you had a full two back. But you're going to account for it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You got to account for what he can do, because when the ball is snapped and you don't know who's going to have the football, you've got to be prepared for that. But with that being said, Derrick Henry brings so much to this team, and it's the one thing about this team. If it was to make the comment, of all the teams in the NFL that can beat the Kansas City Chiefs and win a Super Bowl championship, who would that one team be? I would say the Ravens. Now, that's just me. Now, don't get me wrong. Somebody's going to pop up. It could be the Cowboys. It could be, who knows who's it going to be. I mean, it could be anybody that pops up, and it might be the Eagles again. I don't know who it could be anybody. But the point is, it might be Miami. I don't know. But the point is I would say the Ravens, because what we know is Lamar Jackson's there, right?
He is.
We know that.
He is.
And we now know Derrick Henry's going, right? That's the one team that's going to be a threat to the Kansas City Chiefs.
So, I think that it's been pretty apparent in this free agency time period right now that teams, especially in the AFC, are wanting to do everything possible to prevent Kansas City from going for 3 championships in a row.
Right.
It's not only Derrick Henry going to the Ravens, but there was a report yesterday that the Steelers, there was interest from the Chiefs to trade for wide receiver Deontay Johnson, and the Steelers were unwilling to trade him within the conference. They did not want him to go to Kansas City.
Right.
So ultimately they make a trade and he goes to the Panthers instead. So I think that definitely is a mentality. It's top of mind for teams, especially in the AFC, to prevent Kansas City for going for a three-peat. Let's go to the KFH hotline now, 869-1240. Our buddy Earl is on the line. He's got some thoughts on Derrick Henry. Good morning, Earl. Welcome into the show.
Good morning to you guys. Hey, Paul, I got to ask you.
Sure.
How well did the Ravens run the ball last year?
Not
First
bad.
in the NFL, right?
Well, now wait a second. Are you talking about traditional run the football?
I mean, their rushing stats, their running backs, how they performed last year, they were a top 5 running team, correct?
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but I would say.
When you hang your hat on the Ravens, you hang your hat on a running football team, correct?
That's what they do. That's what they do.
That's what they do.
Right.
Okay. So last year they had great running game, home field advantage, and all that. I understand what your hypothesis is on Derrick Henry, but not running the ball isn't what kept them from beating Kansas City at home in the AFC Championship game. They still have one big glaring weakness, that Steve Spagnuolo, Mr. Spags, can scheme up and get Lamar Jackson in a position where he doesn't make plays. Until Lamar can make plays, more like Joe Burrow, if you're going to say who really has faced down the Chiefs and got it done. Joe's done it. Lamar hasn't. He consistently has been made to look pedestrian in the big moments by a Spags defense. I don't think Derrick Henry changes that.
But don't you think, Earl, just, and I get your point on that. I think that my only counter to that would be now defenses, and I'm not saying that Spags can't do it. Spags has proven himself as probably the best defensive coordinator in the game, but there is now an added layer that you have to account for and you have to plan for. And knowing that the makeup of this defense for Kansas City next year in some ways will look different. We know that they're not going to have Willie Gay next year, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the program. And who knows what will happen with the L'Jarius Sneed. You've got to now game plan for an added wrinkle of having a guy like Derrick Henry, who, even though he's 30, can absolutely still be a threat in running the football.
Okay, so yeah, everything looks good on paper, right?
Sure.
2 years ago when Russ went to the Broncos Super Bowl team, right? Everything's looking good on paper. In practice, though, running the ball is what the Ravens do. Stopping the run game's a big part. Look, I love that big old stud running back. Age 30 is kind of a hard year beginning with running backs with a lot of wear and tear on that body. So ultimately, the Ravens' idea probably is kind of keep him in the garage a little bit, September, October, bring him out in them cold weather games. But look, last year's the first year Lamar made it to the playoffs healthy, okay? So you got a team in the Ravens, I'm speaking of Ravens, that are sitting there now much like the Eagles did last year. After trying to get to the mountaintop, were knocked off, and it leaves a bitter taste. So as you're marking up, hey, the Ravens are the threat. They're not the threat anymore. If they were going to get it done, they would have got it done last year. Derrick Henry, in my opinion, does not change that because they had great Dobbins running back. I mean, they've had a slew of running backs. So until Lamar can get them over the hump there, they're just not that guy. Look, it's easy to say right now in March and forget that playoff game and how inept a Ravens offense looked with Lamar having to pass from the pocket.
I got you. But here's the thing that I'm trying to get across, and that is that Lamar Jackson was the leading rusher for the Ravens last year, 821 yards. Gus Edwards, a running back who played all 17 games, by the way, was the second leading rusher, 810 yards. Listen, in an off year, yeah. Earl, Derrick Henry had 1,100 yards. I think this guy is capable of doing 12 to 1,500 yards with the Ravens because the Ravens have basically what many consider a top 5 offensive line in the entire NFL. So you put that kind of offensive line who can pass protect, who can give Lamar Jackson the opportunity to throw the ball, and Derek Thomas the chance to run
Derrick
the football.
Henry.
Derrick Henry.
DT be running it. I'd be all over that heavenly dang rush.
Yeah, that was a flashback.
Yeah.
But you get my point. Derrick Henry, you give him the chance to run the football. He goes for more than 1,100 yards if he stays healthy. He goes for more than 1,100 yards. And I'm telling you, it's a new threat in that conference. It's a new threat.
Same old threat we dealt with at Tennessee, and I can't see the Ravens in the playoff games against Studley do right.
Lamar Jackson did not play for the Titans. Come on, Earl.
No, I was saying when Derrick Henry made the AFC Championship game with the Titans is what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because you were saying, a new threat. Not a new threat to Chiefsville, baby. This is a guy we've dealt with before, and we didn't let him beat us in the playoffs then.
Right. I think, Earl, I think the difference in all of that is that when the Titans made it to the AFC Championship game, they went there based on their defense that Mike Vrabel built, and then their really only offensive threat was Derrick Henry. They didn't, they had Ryan Tannehill throwing the football. There really wasn't a whole lot of other added offensive threats. Now you're adding a guy like Derrick Henry to the Ravens offense that has done quite a bit with Lamar Jackson and those wide receivers, and of course, Mike Andrews at tight end. But regardless, it is going to be a threat for Kansas City. We appreciate the take, Earl. We're going to go back to the KFH hotline at 869-1240. Virgil on the line wanting to chime in about Derrick Henry. Virgil, what's on your mind this morning?
Hey, I want to kind of talk about what Earl's talking about.
Yeah.
Last year, if you remember the playoff game, the mistake the Ravens made is they didn't run the ball like they should have.
Right.
They just abandoned the run. So I think with having Derrick Henry in the backfield, that mistake may not repeat itself. Imagine having the fullback, Alan Ricard, 300 pounds coming at you in front of Derrick Henry, and the third option, Lamar Jackson keeping the ball. That is going to be scary for a lot of teams. Now, the Chiefs are the champs, no doubt. We got to do something to remedy that, and I think that's what we did with this signing. We can talk about how good their running game was last year, but let's be honest, Gus Edwards and Justice Hill are not Derrick Henry.
Yep.
Right. You know what you just described, and if I'm getting it right, is you just described ISO and power off tackle, leading with a back, Lamar Jackson falling back. That's a two-back play back in the day.
Yeah.
That's just two backs. That's two backs. And that changes the way you play defense, Virgil. And by the way, my Uncle Virgil, who's gone, I love the guy. I've always loved the name Virgil. I have just always, I love the name Virgil. But anyway, with that being said,
never made a bad one. Never made a bad one.
There you go. And never had a bad Virgil caller on this.
There you go.
So don't let me down, Virgil. But anyway, with that being said, you described good old-fashioned hardcore football. Lead up, follow. I mean, but you've got to account for that if you're a defense, right, Virgil?
Yeah, and then you also got to worry about of all Lamar's stats. I was surprised when I read up how good he was on blitzes and that's what a lot of teams did against Tennessee last year. Is they blitz him on first down a lot so that Derrick couldn't get moving. Lamar's done really well against blitzes. I was surprised that his numbers were as good. So that's another thing. And then if you got that running game going, that play action pass is going to come in, and you got Mark Andrews to throw to. You got Zay Flowers. I think Bateman is
Bateman's back.
Finally going to have a good game. So for a good season. So I'm really excited.
All right, Virgil, I've got a question for you before we let you go. Here's the question. I'm going to give you Kansas City or I'm going to give you the Ravens. In fact, I'm going to give you both of them. You take the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I mean, you take the Chiefs and the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. You take the field. What would you do?
God, I'm a diehard Ravens fan, and Kansas City is probably the best team. So I'd probably have to take those two teams and let you have the field.
Wow.
But I'd want odds.
Yeah.
I'd want odds.
You know something? I don't know how you would do it. What would you do, Tommy?
Man, it's hard to bet against Kansas City with what they've done the last couple of years. If we're talking odds, the field is going to give you better odds, I'm thinking, just because of the way that Kansas City has performed the last couple of years. But man, that's a tough decision. And I do think, Virgil, that, to your point, it's a situation where you mentioned the way that they abandoned the run in the AFC Championship game. That was inexcusable. It was inexplicable when they did that. We talked about it at the time, that the key to beating Kansas City was to run the football, because at that time, Willie Gay was injured. He didn't play. Now they don't have Willie Gay at all on the team. He signs a deal with the Saints, a 1-year deal. So that I think the next time, if there is a next time that these two teams face off, maybe in an AFC Championship game or sometime in the playoffs, I can almost guarantee you that John Harbaugh is not going to abandon the run, especially now that they've got Derrick Henry in the backfield. I just can't imagine that would be the case.
And that was the one thing coming out of last year, is they fired Greg Romans, our old offensive coordinator, because he was such a stickler to stand to the run, even when it was time to get out of that, and brought in Todd Monken. And I thought, all year he's made good calls on when to check out of runs and stuff like that, and it didn't materialize in the playoff game. Kansas City for whatever they did.
Yep. Last thing for you, Virgil, before we let you go, as a diehard Ravens fan, in your mind, does this Derrick Henry signing, does that get them over the hump? Do you think that the Ravens are a Super Bowl champion caliber team now?
Well, I think last year, if you analyze the game, I mean, Kansas City was clearly the best team in the NFL at the end of the season. The Ravens threw an interception in the end zone. They fumbled the ball in the end zone. Good play by Kansas City. But it wasn't out of the realm last year for them to beat them. And I think this makes the running game stronger. This makes being able to burn more clock, maybe keep the other team off the field a little easier. I mean, you're still going to have to deal with that 15 there in Kansas City, but I think they're a better team. I also think that you're going to find we're losing Patrick Queen. You're going to see Simpson, the linebacker from Clemson, is going to step in, and he is a stud. Remember, you heard it here first. Trent Simpson from Clemson steps in at linebacker, and we don't miss a beat with Patrick Queen gone.
Well, there you go. We appreciate the take, Virgil. Thanks a lot for chiming in and your thoughts on the Ravens and the signing of Derrick Henry. Like we talked about, Paul, it's been a wild couple of days, and there have been some deals and some other things that have happened that have really significantly impacted the Kansas City Chiefs. And not really only what other teams are doing to try to challenge Kansas City, but some of the moves that have been made with the team itself. The big news yesterday, Patrick Mahomes restructures his contract yet again to free up more cap room. Makes me wonder what is on the table, what Brett Veach is working on. We're going to dive into that on the other side of the break. Right now, let's do our giveaway. Terry Clark coming to the Crown Uptown in April. Let's take caller 2 on the KFH hotline at 869-1240 for a chance to win a pair of tickets to see Terry Clark at the Crown Uptown in April. We're coming right back. It's Sports Daily on KFH. Congratulations to the guy with the best name in the world winning our Terry Clark tickets.
Paul won.
Tommy won.
Tommy won.
Not me. Not me. I don't know a lot of other Tommies, Paul. I feel like a lot of people with that name, typically they try to convert it to Tom when they get older. They don't usually stick with Tommy all the way. I tried. I'll be honest with you. When I was a teenager, I kind of thought, okay, I'm growing up. I'm becoming a man. Tommy is a little boy's name. I gotta switch to Tom, and it didn't work. No, nobody would call me Tom. So I went back to Tommy, and it's been that way ever since.
Played football with a guy who was a safety. His name was Tommy Stewart, and you know what his nickname was? We may give you the same nickname.
Okay.
Bullet. That was his.
Okay,
that
Bullet.
was so.
All right.
The only Tommy, because you're right. Other than you,
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of Tommies, but the only other Tommy I knew had the nickname of Bullet. I kind of liked it. You remind me of that safety who can play downhill and light it up. I'm telling you, I think we may nickname you Bullet. What do you think?
Well, we should do like an offshoot show, like maybe a weekend show, and call it like the Bullet and Paul show. What do you think about that, Jad? Would that work?
I don't know about that. I was going to say I was kind of like you in college. I was going to change mine.
Okay.
I didn't want to go by Jad anymore just because I was kind of sick of trying to explain it to everyone.
Yeah.
And that was, always a little bit cumbersome and bothersome. I was going to use my middle name. And it turns out that my college roommate he had the same middle name I do, Ryan. And I switched roommates for, various reasons. And I switched with another guy whose name was Ryan. And there were also 3 other Ryans on the same floor.
Okay, that wouldn't have worked.
So it
that wouldn't have been a good idea.
Going to work.
Yeah, I for a while I was really kind of not thrilled. Like I wanted to feel like I was more grown up or whatever, and I thought nobody's going to take me seriously with that name. The older I've gotten, the more I've leaned into it, and I feel like it's memorable. I feel like it's recognizable. I feel like people remember it well because there aren't a lot of grown men named Tommy out there. For a radio perspective, a sports talk radio show, I think it works.
A great name.
I'm good. I'm good.
Not
with
even. It. I mean, even for any kind of genre with regards to radio, Tommy. Yeah, I kind of like that. You know what my nickname was in college?
I could come up with some ideas, but I'll let you.
Come on,
I'll let you
get
tell
your
me.
mind out.
I'll let you tell me.
Savovia.
I don't know what that means.
Savage.
Oh, Savage. Okay,
Savovia with the Mexican flair.
You've got a last name that's kind of like Tommy for my first name. Like it's memorable. Savage. Like it fits well on the radio.
Right. And Bruce Hurdle. Jad, I don't know if you remember that Bruce Hurdle used to call me Savage.
Okay, I like that. How about this? Okay, it'd be our offshoot show, Bullet and Savage.
Yeah,
Bullet and Savage.
Bullet and Savage.
That works well.
I like that.
Oh, I like that.
We might be onto something. I don't think we would have any listeners at all, but we could at least give it a try. It's something worth a shot. Congratulations to Tommy winning our tickets to Terry Clark.
Congratulations,
at
Tommy.
the Crown Uptown in April. We'll do that again tomorrow and on Friday. So we do appreciate all of that. Let's get back into the NFL, Paul. Patrick Mahomes, the big story with him yesterday with the Kansas City Chiefs. Restructured his contract again. It seems like this is a pretty common occurrence. This has happened several times over the course of his tenure in Kansas City, where he's restructured his contract, converted a portion of it into a signing bonus, and it frees up a significant amount of cap space for the Kansas City Chiefs to the tune of over $21 million now that they've got freed up. It makes you wonder what the plan is for Kansas City. It also kind of makes you wonder, is there any plan at all? Are they planning on doing really anything, or is this just more of a convenience type thing to have the flexibility to do something? It makes me wonder really what Brett Veach is working on. And is it a scenario where they're trying to find the money available to re-sign L'Jarius Sneed to a long-term deal and pull him off the franchise tag? Or is it a deal where maybe they're trying to go out and find some free agents who are still on the market? Kind of makes you wonder exactly what the plan is.
Of course, they're trying to get Sneed off the franchise tag. That's obviously what they want. I think. Now, I might be wrong, but
it should be.
It looks like to me that's what I would want it to be. Now, with that being said, Let's not make Patrick Mahomes look like he's magnanimous. I mean, you restructure your contract, it means that you're probably, because I didn't see the details of what they've done to restructure, but it probably extends money into the future and takes it out away from this year and moves it out. I'm sure Patrick Mahomes can do that. I'm sure he's probably not in a position where he has to have some cash calls on his mortgage and stuff like that. He's doing just fine. Thank you very much. But it shows me one thing about Patrick Mahomes as being a leader on this team. He's willing to take it on the chin cash wise for the moment.
He's
and
always,
do something.
And you said magnanimous. I think he is. I know he's making a ton of money, but the contracts that he has had, the one that he signed, when was that? Year ago, 2 years ago,
Right.
whenever that was,
$500 million.
huge contract, but it was team friendly. It really, at the time, it was team friendly. Every time that he has worked out a contract, there has been parameters in that contract to help out the Kansas City Chiefs. He's also always been willing to do things like what he did yesterday and convert a portion of that contract to a signing bonus to free up cap space. Basically what they did, they converted $27 million of the contract to a signing bonus, and that creates $21.6 million worth of salary cap space. So this is according to The Athletic, which this kind of goes back to my point as far as the way that the contract is structured. They report that the structure of this contract was designed to do exactly this. This is why the contract was put together in the way that it was. They can convert it, and now they can then go out and try to address other needs. You have to have that flexibility with a guy like Patrick Mahomes, and Mahomes has to know that that flexibility is possible, because if you're paying him a ton of money, but they don't have any kind of funds left to go out and actually put a team around him, that's not going to be good for Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's smart enough and savvy enough to know that it's kind of a year-by-year basis. They did this sort of thing last year. They freed up $10+ million of cap space by converting some of his money.
Mm-hmm.
I think he knows that that's going to allow Brett Veach to be able to have the money to go operate and get him weapons and get him other players to surround himself with.
What is Patrick Mahomes is smart about this kind of stuff, first of all. And he knows that image is everything. And there's a life after football for Patrick Mahomes, I think. And what is his image going to be? It's nice that it's 3-time Super Bowl champion, but what if it was 6 or 7-time Super Bowl champion? What if that was what it was? Now, he's not going to be any less rich because of what he's doing, but boy, will his image be different. It'll be totally different. So when you look at that, you think to yourself, this is smart business. Now, he's not sacrificing, is he? I mean, I've started businesses before myself and start from zero, and there's some risk, there's some sacrifice. He's not risking, he's not sacrificing, but he's being smart. By the way, the ultimate type of deferred package in the history of sports is Ohtani.
Oh, sure.
$750 million.
Yeah, the vast majority of the contract
10 years
was
out.
deferred.
He doesn't even get paid on it
Yep.
for 10 years.
Yeah. It's interesting the way that these contracts are being structured now. It's a little bit different in Major League Baseball because no salary cap and, all of that. But for what Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs were able to do, does give Veach a little bit more flexibility. If they do trade L'Jarius Sneed, I think that everybody would love for them to re-sign him.
I do.
In fact, L'Jarius
I
Sneed
want him
himself said, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, that he would love to be re-signed by the Chiefs. But if they don't do that, if they do trade him, that would then open up almost $20 million more in cap space. And then you have that much more flexibility. They could go out there and they could acquire a receiver potentially to help out Patrick Mahomes. They could go and address left tackle. That's something that definitely needs some help because Jawan Taylor didn't develop into a left tackle like people thought. They were able to get Donovan Smith on kind of a bridge deal. He's out there, but there are some other free agents at left tackle that they could look at, like Tyron Smith from the Cowboys, David Bakhtiari, Dwayne Brown. Some of those guys are also out there that they could try to take a swing at. So there are absolutely needs for Kansas City, but they wouldn't be able to address any of them if this situation wasn't done with Patrick Mahomes yesterday.
Well, the Snead deal is the big deal for me.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him get signed and stay a Kansas City Chief because he's a difference maker. Tommy. He's
It would be a
difference
it'd be a
maker.
downgrade in their secondary, no doubt about it, if they lose L'Jarius Sneed. I think that secondary would probably go from an elite secondary to a good secondary because they still have Trent McDuffie, who's a great cornerback. They've got guys like Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson, who showed flashes last year in that secondary. They re-signed Deion Bush. They've got Mike Edwards. They've got some other players at safety that have shown good things on film. So I think they would still have quite a bit of talent in the secondary. But yeah, you don't want to lose a guy like L'Jarius Sneed, and that would come potentially after they've already lost Willie Gay Jr. He signed a 1-year deal with the New Orleans Saints. That one hurts me a little bit more, Paul, because if you look at the terms of that contract, Willie Gay Jr. to New Orleans, it was a 1-year deal worth $5 million.
That's it.
The Chiefs couldn't come up with that.
That's
Also,
makes you
I mean, I
wonder.
know that they already re-signed Drew Tranquil, and you would think that he will probably be the one that will fill in or that will take over that starting linebacker role. But 1 year, $5 million, you could do that if you were Kansas City to bring back Willie Gay.
Is it just me, or if I was a professional football player, is it all about money? I would want to be on a team that has the potential of winning one,
I've told you
2,
before,
3.
Paul.
I don't get it. I want to be on a Super Bowl
things.
championship.
The three most important things are money, money, and money. It really is. I mean, it's a business.
But there comes a point where, these guys, I mean, if they're taking care of their money, and I hope they are, because we all know of the horror stories where, these guys make $100 million and blow it.
Right.
I hope that's not the case. I hope these guys are smart enough to be good stewards of the money that they make. But all that being said, if you can be a good steward, I want a chance to win another 3, 4, 5. How long does Patrick Mahomes play football? Because whatever
at least another 12, 13 years, I would think.
Well, you have a shot at some Super Bowls in there, don't you? And I would want a chance to be that guy that I could say I have a fistful of Super Bowl rings.
Yeah.
And boy, that means something to me. That would means championships are hard to get.
I get
and
that.
They're hard to get
I
in
get
the
it.
NFL.
I understand it. I in an ideal world, that would absolutely be the case. But if you've got a situation where you can set up your family financially for generations to come by going somewhere else, that might be a sacrifice that a lot of these guys are willing to make. So I understand that as well.
I get it.
At the same time.
But the money, it depends on the money. And we're talking, and I'm with you on that.
Mhm.
If it's a huge sum of money
Yep.
and a life-altering sum of money that you can't get there, I mean, I'm talking about all things being fairly equal. What's $1 million here or $1 million there? I mean, to me, the chances to be on something so special as multiple Super Bowl teams, it's special to me.
Do you think that a lot? What's $1 million here? What's $1 million there?
Well, when you got
when you're
four of
Paul
your
Savage,
Yeah.
when you're loaded like Savage over here,
like Savage,
what is $1 million? That's pocket change.
yeah, pocket change.
You can find $1 million in your couch cushions,
To
Paul.
some guys, that's exactly right. It is pocket change, not the guys like you and me who work for a living. We're obviously doing sports talk radio, not for free.
Yeah. A couple of other quick final notes on Kansas City on the free agent front before we take a break and get ready for our final full segment. Irv Smith Jr., who was a tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals, signed a 1-year deal with Kansas City yesterday. So presumably he'll be a backup tight end, but maybe somebody that can line up opposite of Travis Kelce, maybe complement him a little bit. So that's a 1-year deal for Kansas City. That's a really good question. I mean, he's a free agent. I'm pretty sure he is. So I don't know if that means that Bell will not return. They also had Jody Fortson as a tight end. I don't know what that means for him. So that was a free agent signing for Kansas City yesterday. And then a rumor that I've been seeing around social media as the wide receiver market continues to get smaller and smaller. There is a rumor out there that Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown from the Cardinals, is interested in playing for Kansas City. And that has been a target that's been speculated on for a long time to be a wide receiver potential for Kansas City. The Chiefs had interest in Darnell Mooney. He signed with the Falcons yesterday to go join Kirk Cousins. So that's not going to happen. We talked about Deontay Johnson, how there was conversations apparently between the Chiefs and the Steelers. The Steelers did not want to send him within the conference. So now he's with the Panthers. Who knows what will happen at wide receiver? There are still some options out there. And as the days go on, we'll see what ends up panning out for Kansas City. All right, let's take a timeout. On the other side, our final full segment, we'll get you caught up on what's going to happen from college basketball in the tournaments that kick off in just a couple of hours from now. That's on the way next on Sports Daily. Okay, Paul, our final full segment of the program today. You sent me this earlier today. I saw the news come down yesterday and feel like we at least need to spend a couple of moments on it because of just its ridiculous nature. Aaron Rodgers apparently being considered for a vice presidential bid with Robert Kennedy Jr., who is launching a independent bid for president. Rodgers has not commented, I don't think. The Jets have not commented. But this has been circulating with some pretty legitimate news organizations saying that there is a serious possibility that Aaron Rodgers couldn't end up as a vice presidential candidate. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. I can't believe we're talking about it because of how ridiculous it is. What's your take on this?
Well, I think he would be able to probably campaign on Mondays and Tuesdays. I think he could probably get that off from the Jets, and he could show up at rallies and stuff on Mondays and Tuesdays, but just still go play the game. Of course, it's kind of funny, but I'll tell you what it does for the campaign. Who was the other guy running?
The presidential candidate?
Yeah, who's the presidential?
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Don't know much about him, but
I mean, he's the son of Robert Kennedy.
Yeah, I can tell you this. We're talking about him.
We are.
I mean, he has thrown this out, and as ridiculous as we know this is, and there is nothing to this, nothing will happen. We understand this. We know this. Robert Kennedy Jr. is getting a heck of a lot of play.
Sure he is. And,
you and I are talking about him. Would we be talking about Robert Kennedy Jr. running for president if it wasn't Aaron Rodgers?
But you also know that this is a little bit of a spectacle when not only is Aaron Rodgers being considered as a vice presidential candidate, but so is Jesse the Body Ventura is also being considered as a vice presidential candidate for this guy. So, if you're choosing between Aaron Rodgers and Jesse the Body Ventura, at that point, you kind of know that I'm not suggesting that this isn't a serious thing. I'm just saying that a media spectacle is also, I think, part of this at the same time.
And of course, this would mean that there's if it got to the point where he would think, I've got enough money, I've got enough money in the bank, I'm set for life. Why not take a flyer and start a new career? Now, I'm just saying, now you're shaking your head at me. And I think it's about 99-1 that it won't happen. But I mean, what if? I mean, it would certainly, something, I've never gotten the feeling that Aaron Rodgers is a dumb man, is not a smart person.
Yeah.
Doesn't know his way around, the world and what's going on. I don't know what his views are, politically.
Well, and he's been vocal about a lot of those things. I mean, the thing
like
about
what?
The thing that makes both of these guys, Kennedy and Rodgers, fit together, and I think they've become buddies from what I've read.
Oh, is that
is because their major platform, they're anti-vaccine. That's the biggest thing about it. So when the COVID vaccine and all of that, like Aaron Rodgers was all, against that. Kennedy was the same way. That's the platform that, he's running on. My issue with it, and this is not a political show, we're not going to get into that sort of thing on this, but my issue with it is that Aaron Rodgers has always presented himself that he thinks he's the smartest person in the room. That's the way that Aaron Rodgers has approached everything. He has this air about him. I mean, the guy, for God's sakes, was a Jeopardy host, an interim Jeopardy host. He thinks he knows a lot. He thinks he is intelligent. He thinks he's smarter than you. He thinks he's smarter than me. He thinks he's smarter than anybody else out there. And I think that that's probably part of the reason why he has become vocal on his viewpoints on things. That's probably part of the reason why he is, being considered for this potentially. Do I think it ultimately goes anywhere? No, probably not. I think it's a flash in the pan. We probably won't be talking about it again. That being said, though, the reason why I don't like Aaron Rodgers from a personal level, of course, I've never met the guy, but it's just from what I've seen of him, he's kind of pompous. He kind of thinks that he's smarter than everybody. I have a problem with that.
Well, I get the feeling that you are heartfelt with that, and I'm kind of the same way. Not that I know him well enough, or I've seen enough on outside of football situations where I would be able to pinpoint that. But I understand what you're saying because I'm on borderline with that. I just don't have enough information. But with that being said, he's getting Robert Kennedy Jr. I got that right.
Yep.
Robert Kennedy Jr. is getting headlines that he would have never gotten.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, I wasn't even aware that he was running for. I didn't know he was a third-party deal. So
you know who else is getting headlines? The New York Jets, because of this.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm the ownership, the front office, if I'm Robert Saleh, the head coach, if I'm the other players on that roster, did I sign up for this kind of attention? Did I sign up for the drama surrounding Aaron Rodgers when I brought him in? Did I anticipate that? I mean, obviously you had the Achilles injury, but the entire season long narrative, will he return? Will he be back for the playoffs? How's the rehab going? It's this crazy treatment that he's doing to get himself back into shape to be able to play in the playoffs. And then that didn't end up happening because obviously they didn't make the playoffs. And now all of this with the vice presidential campaign and all the off the field things. Do you want this if you're the New York Jets organization? Do you feel like that, is this a headache having Aaron Rodgers on your roster? Is it a distraction for you?
Well, you're on top of this story better than I. I will admit that. I know that for a fact. My question would be, has Aaron Rodgers shot this down? This is a day and a half, 2-day story.
I don't believe he has.
Has he shot it down?
As of now, I don't believe he has.
What do we make of that?
I mean, the reports are that he is interested.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
That's just the reporting.
Okay.
I don't think there's been anything confirmed on that.
Okay.
But I think that the likelihood exists, the potential is there where we could legitimately be seeing Aaron Rodgers as a VP candidate in this year's election.
Well, he's not a dumb man. He's not a dumb man.
He's not dumb, but he's also not as smart as he wants the world to think he is. Okay. That's my issue with him. It can be in the middle somewhere. Dude, you can be a good quarterback in the NFL. You can be a Hall of Famer. You're going to be that. You're a Super Bowl champion. You're a former MVP. You can be all of that. You can be a smart, intelligent man. And that's fine, and I'll respect you for it. You don't have to be the vice president of the United States of America. What are we doing here? This election coming up is already going to be all sorts of crazy. No. We don't need to add this onto it.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do. Come on, let's run.
Oh, my God.
I'm for Aaron Rodgers for president. I'm moving him up.
Here we go. All right, we'll take our final full time out. When we come back, we'll let you know what's on the network coming up next on Sports Daily.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, I would definitely encourage you, if you want to listen to the Wichita State Shockers basketball game, it's going to be over on KUYN. Pre-game coverage begins in just a minute, 11 o'clock. Tip-off is at noon. Mike Kennedy has the call of that game as the Shockers take on Rice in the American Tournament in Fort Worth. Hopefully the Shockers can get a win and move on to tomorrow. Here on our station, Jim Rome follows us at 11, Bob and Jeff at 2, Zach Gelb at 4, and then K-State basketball in the Big 12 tournament tonight taking on Texas. Wyatt Thompson has the call beginning at 5 o'clock for pregame, tip-off at 6. Shocker baseball over on KNSS tonight taking on Nebraska beginning at 5:45. Tomorrow on the show, we will have our K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald and give you a recap on everything college basketball. It's on the way for you tomorrow. For Jad Chambers and Paul Savage, I'm Tommy Castor. We'll see you tomorrow on Sports Daily.